A lot of momentum for this hashtag Me Too, and it has all sorts of tentacles, including the Miss America story.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Frankly, never been a big fan of the Miss America pageant, but my guests are here nonetheless, and they'll probably teach me a few things. But I didn't realize that the Miss America pageant was dealing with what this country has been dealing with, and that is a problem between men and women, it seems. It's a broad conversation and a specific story, and we'll get to it tonight. Nice to have you, and thank you for tuning in. Oprah, of course, is dominating the 24-hour news cycle. Headline from the other night in the Golden Globes, her phenomenal speech, and now there's all sorts of talk about her running for the presidency. Earlier today, Gayle King on CBS confirmed that, and of course she's her BFF. We have to use the proper terminology here. The BFF says that it is a serious consideration, I'm paraphrasing, for Oprah to run for president in 2020. Which I think is a whole other conversation. I don't know where and how we got away from knowing that fundamentally having experience in government, A, is not a bad thing, that politics is not an evil thing, politicians are not intrinsically and inherently evil, and that experience in that craft is important in doing things like leading. Having said that, the Trump situation has opened the door, and of course Trump and Oprah have had a relationship and have talked back and forth about the presidency, and the president was asked today whether Oprah actually would do it.
Thank you. Hey, can you beat Oprah, by the way? Yeah, I'll beat Oprah. Oprah would be a lot of fun. I know her very well. You know, I did one of her last shows. She had Donald Trump, this is before politics, her last week, and she had Donald Trump, and my family. It was very nice. No, I like Oprah. I don't think she's going to run. But you can beat her. I don't think she's going to run. I know her very well.
Thank you. When's he ever been right about stuff like that? I don't consider the president to be credible there. Who knows? I've stopped guessing what tomorrow is going to bring. But, you know, headlines like this have been generating since Sunday night, and there are issues that Oprah is now on top of and perhaps leading on. She really made a statement and a half Sunday night.
So I want all the girls watching here and now to know that a new day is on the horizon. And when that new day finally dawns, it will be because of a lot of magnificent women, many of whom are right here in this room tonight, and some pretty phenomenal men fighting hard to make sure that they become the leaders who take us to the time when nobody ever has to say, "Me too," again.
Professor Levy-Friedman is here for the new year. She's my in-house sociologist, pragmatist on women's issues and the like. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year
to you. Good to see you. And Allison Rogers is a former Miss America 2006, and there's a story there that we're going to talk about a little bit later on, but has experience on a vast level, including administrative experience in Rhode Island government. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
What's your take on the Oprah speech?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. When did we get away from thinking policy was a good thing? But I've been thinking a lot about it, and being the President of the United States should also be about being a good communicator and bringing people together. And we could definitely say that Oprah Winfrey is particularly skilled at speaking to a variety of audiences.
Best in the world, perhaps.
So if that's what we want the presidency to be about now, well, maybe she'd be very, very good at that. But you know, all things being equal, I would like to see someone with policy experience in the position.
Well, you're somebody who's actually worked on policy. So what's your take?
Yes, you're right. I've worked in state government for 5 years, worked in Capitol Hill for 4.5. To Hillary's point, she's absolutely an incredible communicator. Her speech on Sunday night was inspiring. And that is something that I think we should look for in our leaders, somebody that can communicate a vision and help us see where we want to go. If she is seriously thinking about this, if she can surround herself with people that have experience in government, that are policy experts, then I think she has the case to make to all of us that she might be potentially the right person for this situation. To your point, I agree, experience is worth a lot, so I would love to also see somebody that has government experience in that role.
I'm just listening very carefully to both of you, thinking we're in an incredible transition right now in this country.
Yes.
I don't think for the better. I think we have an uninformed electorate. I think we have more and more ways to be informed and less information that's actually saturating. It's almost like, hey, we want to roll the dice on going to personality presidentiality? Okay. Nuts. I think it's nuts. I don't care who it is. He's nuts.
When you think about the way his
She's not nuts. She's phenomenal. But really?
Yeah.
Are we that starved? Well, what are we starved for?
Well, I'm reminded of like different forms of media and when television started, the ways in which television impacted the presidential race. You think of the famous Nixon-Kennedy debate and who looked better on TV, and it became much more important for a president to be telegenic. Now we live in this social media-driven society, and people, you know, read a headline and think they know the whole story or only pay attention for 30 seconds. Hopefully they'll pay attention for 30 minutes tonight. But it's hard to get into those in-depth conversations, and perhaps we need someone who is skilled in this communication, this form of communication media, in order to get the right message out there, or not the fake news.
Will the politics of the Me Too movement be so strong and the pendulum swinging so hard, and her grabbing the reins the other night, literally, as at least in the last 2 news cycles, the de facto leader of it, be so provocative in the presidential 2020 race that it's almost a no-brainer that she'll have to?
You know, I'm not sure about that. I had a boss on Capitol Hill that used to say all of the time, politics is motion. And as somebody that worked to implement different programs at both the state and federal level, I always felt a sense of natural tension with that. And I think it really speaks to where we are.
What does that mean, politics is motion?
You want to keep showing progress. You want to announce this program. You want to announce this big initiative, whatever it is. The people that actually are on the ground making that happen are scrambling to catch up with whatever that announcement is.
Sometimes good politics is just sitting tight and letting the world take care of itself. Sometimes.
Sometimes. I think it depends on the situation, for sure.
It probably depends on your philosophy. You're a Democrat, right?
I am a Democrat,
you are.
yes, absolutely.
It's not the worst thing in the world. But anyway.
Back to your point, I wonder, are we going to be having this conversation? I don't know. Or will we, as a society, have moved on to
meaning the
whatever's
Me Too
next?
conversation.
Meaning the Me Too.
Yeah, last night I rather clumsily, admittedly, tried to explain that I thought that Oprah kind of just went right past my gender until her last, mention of wonderful men or whatever, incorporating themselves into the solution. We often have pendulum swings, and somewhere the pragmatism of solving something gets lost in the middle of it. I think there are a lot of men who are as offended by this harassment environment, more so than not so, and I don't know if we get lost in that conversation and where this runaway train goes, or whether it fizzles. And what is exactly that we all want? What do we all want? Do you know?
Well, I'm still reminded of something I said, I think the last time I was on the show, that what Ann Curry said in particular about the Matt Lauer situation really spoke to me, which was the feminist movement got women into the workplace, but it didn't necessarily protect them. And I think what the conversation that's evolving now is about how do we protect women. There's talk about legislation for equal pay. That's a priority in the Rhode Island Senate for this term. So it's like, what can we do now to make sure that women are protected in various ways?
Did you feel unprotected in all of your public policy work?
Unprotected in terms of having a support system throughout, and it depends. I want to come back to your point though about men, because this was something that struck me during Oprah's speech as well, wondering about my male colleagues and friends,
and
how they felt.
And the 5 directors who are up next for the nomination, who got that little joke from what's her name?
Natalie Portman.
Yeah, the 5 male nominees. It was like, oh, come on, man. There was, right?
So I have a twin brother. So growing up with a twin of the opposite gender, you think a lot about gender issues growing up. So that's been on my mind. How do we as women continue to engage? I think the words to use were phenomenal men. The phenomenal men
Correct.
in our life that have helped us. For me, some of the biggest supporters and mentors that I've had have been men. To be honest, there have been women in my life, especially on Capitol Hill, that have not been supportive and that have tried to derail other women's lives and careers. So for me, I think a major part of this conversation has to be both how, as women and as men and women together, we're forming our partnerships and allies together to keep moving forward. So I want to say thank you to having us and opening this discussion. It's important for all of us to come together.
All right, we come back. The pageant that you participated in and had success in has had its own trouble with this situation. I want to tell you about my friends at Navigant Credit Union and just remind you that if you're looking to control your life in the palm of your hand financially, we're always looking for quick access. The totality of your banking information simply comes with downloading the Card Valet app as a member of the Navigant Credit Union. Learn all about it at navigantcu.org. Member NCUA. Be right back. Yeah, so I didn't really realize this was going on amidst all of the challenges that we have between men and women. Check out the Miss America pageant headlines here. A little bit of a struggle. Here's the backstory.
Your Miss America 2012 is...
Beyond the Miss America celebration seen every year on TV, a scandal is rattling the organization. The shakeup began after the Huffington Post published parts of leaked emails appearing to show a handful of Miss America officials ridiculing past winners' appearance, intelligence, and sex lives. In this one, CEO Sam Haskell laughed when the pageant's lead writer referred to former crown holders using a crude term for women's genitalia. In a statement the next day, Haskell said, "Much of what was reported is dishonest, deceptive, and despicable." But after dozens of former Miss Americas published this open letter calling on the Miss America organization leadership to step down, Haskell was suspended and then resigned, along with the organization's president and chairwoman.
We still have a lot of work to do, and so we would love your support and your encouragement.
Former Miss Americas like Mallory Hagan, whom Haskell called a piece of trash in one email, are applauding the move, but they say more needs to be done.
We have to laser focus on the actual benefits of the Miss America organization.
Actor and writer Kate Shindle, who won Miss America in 1998, was derided by Haskell in another leaked email. Where should the organization go from here?
If we're going to expect the public to believe that the Miss America contestants and the Miss Americas are among the brightest, most intelligent, most educated, most passionate, talented, you name it, young women in the country, then we have to start treating them like that every single minute.
Wow. Of all the organizations, you would think that you wouldn't have this kind of a problem. I mean, just outside looking in. This one.
Since the early 1960s.
You're a big fan of this. You've been working with pageants for a long time, and we are former Miss Rhode Island 2006, right?
Not that I'm not a fan, but I'm not a detractor either. It's something that I study, and I've taught a class at Brown called Beauty Pageants in American Society. So it's...
Is that a 3-credit course?
It's a full credit course.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you get the story of feminism and femininity over time in the United States. You can, using pageants as a lens, you learn about race and ethnicity and sexuality changes in the U.S., women's access to education and employment. So it's quite a useful way to learn about women in the United States. But it's true that since the early 1960s, it's been a man who's run the Miss America organization. And that, I think, surprised a lot of people, and they didn't realize that. And
so all that male corporate culture disease that at least has been showing in the spot news coverage that we've had has permeated the Miss America pageant.
That appears to be the case.
Did you see it?
You know, I was shocked by the emails that came to light through the Huffington Post article. I did have concerns based on different experiences, but so I competed in 2006. I've been volunteering for 6 to 8 years at this point, and serve as the executive director for the Miss Rhode Island Scholarship Program. There were just various questions that would come to mind during our different national meetings about whether the leadership truly had the young women as their main priority, and the question as to why, if that was why they were there.
You believe in the pageant business?
You know, I came to the pageant space reluctantly as a person that, again, grew up with a twin brother, played sports growing up, played sports in college and high school. To me, the pageant space was this unknown, uncertain space. I came to it for 3 reasons. 1, for the scholarships to help pay for my education. 2, as an activist that at the time was working on climate change solutions, felt that this was a way to get out my work and help other organizations with sustainability efforts. And 3, because of the talent. As a classical pianist, I really valued an organization that values the arts.
Yet you had to wear a bathing suit.
You do, and as someone that blushes, you know, immediately, that for me was the worst part.
Why?
Well, you know, I'm a very private person. It's not something that if I had to, you know, it's just not my favorite part. That being said, I will tell you, again, having been an athlete for almost all of my life, that was the time in my life when I felt the healthiest and felt the most in shape, and those were life skills that I've been able to carry since then, because I made that dedicated space to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on healthy eating and get in shape, and that was helpful.
Well, look, the conversation can go to the harassment thing itself, or the behavior of these guys, which is despicable. Well, let's finish that part of the conversation. What happens from this exercise? It gets cleaned up, better behavior, move on, right?
That is the goal.
You flush it. You flush the bad behavior. Or
this could be a transformational moment for the pageant itself, to say, do we want to keep including physical fitness as a bikini contest, which, you know, a bathing beauty contest is how Miss America started in 1921, but is that what we want it to be today? So those conversations are suddenly much more possible because there is this leadership change, because suddenly there's this new interest in perhaps making the pageant more modern as it approaches its 100th birthday, which will be celebrated in 2020.
All right, we'll talk about what modern is when we come back. Stay with us. All right, so the modern pageant is what we were talking about, the Miss America pageant. And, you know, sometimes controversy brings positive change. I don't see anything positive about the kind of email spew that was being generated by the management of the Miss America pageant. And you'd think these knuckleheads would be even more sensitive to the idea that you probably want to respect the product. I mean, you're people, but it's product. It's you know, I'm a product. We're up. What are you doing? I mean, why would you even leave a written trail with any of that kind of garbage?
Agree with you on all points. It's shocking for leadership in any organization, but especially for the Miss America organization.
And they didn't just reduce the former Miss Americas to their bodies, but literally to a body part. And so that really, really shocked a lot of people.
So as they're going through the motions of, you know, really trying to celebrate the whole young woman, you know, behind the scenes they're like, you know, that kind of thing, which is, I'm sure, horrifying for every one of you. But this modern thinking that you're thinking about the pageant, do you see a transition as a former participant and now somebody who oversees the Rhode Island operation?
Absolutely. I agree with Hillary's point that this can be a transformational opportunity.
Will people watch it if there's no bathing suits on the stage?
I hope so.
I think they're going to watch it this year. So
because of the controversy?
Yeah.
Why, do you think it'll be addressed or just ignored? In the
I
pageant,
hope it will be addressed in
show.
some way, whether that's so bleakly or directly. I can't imagine that this is not going to be part of the story of this year. And again, they're gearing up for the 100th celebration. So
to the question of the legitimacy and purposefulness of the pageant, let me ask you this question. Your articulateness is clear and profound. Did you have it before the pageant, or was the pageant process something as a younger woman now 12 years ago that helped you have it?
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. The process with the Miss Rhode Island Scholarship Program was, I give a lot of credit to all of the volunteers, and I do want to say it's all volunteers at the state and local level that make this program run. There's so many volunteers that come and help our young women practice their interviews, talk about where they want to go with their lives, what they want to do with their careers. This is, in my mind, a leadership development program, and I owe a lot to everybody that has volunteered with Miss Rhode Island over the years, and that's why I'm giving of my time as a volunteer now to give back as well. I have done a ton of interviews on both sides, getting interviewed and conducting interviews throughout my life, throughout my career, and the young women that go through the Miss America organization I have found to be absolutely the best when it comes to communicating and handling interviews well.
Well, small things like eye contact and all the things, I mean, you work with even Brown students every day. I'm sure it's a big challenge. They're in their phones, even the best students these days seem to have a real communication disability on the basics. Please, thank you, handshakes, eye contact, all the things I think are fundamental. I mean, 101 assets are slipping away, I think. You see kids every day, am I wrong?
Yeah, or how to present yourself in a professional way. So, yes, there's a swimsuit portion, but there's this 10-minute interview where you're expected to be in business attire and present yourself in that way to be taken seriously. Although I do have to point out that the current Miss America graduated from Brown in 2016.
Right.
So, obviously some of that is happening. But
don't tell me you just study this thing. You're a fan of this thing. You're a fan of the pageant. You take pride in it.
I'm a fan of pageantry, so I wouldn't say that it's just limited to Miss America. Like, I watch Miss Universe and Miss USA, and I say to people, I dare you to watch it and not get a little bit sucked in, because it's a competition.
Competition sucks everybody.
Right,
who likes to see competition.
People have an automatic identity based on who they represent, and you connect with someone, and so that becomes fun. And there are great volunteers that are associated with the organization, and it's a way to meet people and for others to develop their networking
I'll tell you
skills.
though, it's just, and we can't do this in a minute. Please come back for more of this conversation. Let's do it on the radio as well, because this whole idea of femininity in a competition is really, I think, a mind blower for America right now. Just the whole thing, just the nuances between acknowledging attractiveness in women, femininity, and then knowing the difference between that and whatever it is we have a problem with right now is perplexing.
Did you watch The Bachelor last night, though?
No, I never watched that stupid show.
I know, but
that's a stupid female demeaning show.
On competing based on your femininity, and what, about 6 million people watch it every week?
Idiots. The whole country is full of idiots.
Or there are people who choose to, someone could say that about watching football too. Why do I want to watch someone get a head injury or something? So I'm just, that's an extreme version of masculinity. Yes, there are other extreme versions of femininity out there too.
Competing for a relationship on television is demeaning. It's, don't get me.
It's not how I met my husband.
You got another 3-credit class? We'll do that one.
I would love to invite you to meet our contestants this year.
I'll do it.
You
could be a good judge.
It will give you hope for the future.
See, I got sucked in, just like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, clean up this pageant. Let's move America forward. Good to see you guys.
Thank you very
Final
much.
word when we come back. Going on in the city of Providence, a new city council president, and what a tragedy with a house that was about to be condemned to end up going up in flames. Dan McGowan, who covers Providence like a glove, will be here tomorrow night to talk to us about it. Don't forget, weekdays 3 to 6, you can hear the radio show on WPRO, and we hope you participate. Have a great evening. Good night.